ሰላም የቻናላችን ተከታታዮች እንደምን አላችሁ? የ10ኛ ክፍል ፊዚክስ አዲሱ ካሪክለምን ዩኒት 1 ቬክተር ኳንቲቲስ በሚለው ዩኒት ውስጥ ስፔሻል ኬዝስ ኦፍ ቬክተር አዲሽን የሚለውን ሴክሽን ይዘንላችሁ ቀርበናል። እንደተለመደው ለቻናላችን አዲስ የሆናችሁ ቻናላችንን ሰብስክራይብ እንድታደርጉ እንጋብዛችኋለን። በተጨማሪም ይህ ቻናል ለብዙ ተማሪዎች ይደርስ ዘንድ ላይክ ኤንድ ሼር እንድታደርጉ እየጋበዝናችሁ ወደ ዛሬው ርዕሳችን እንቀጥላለን። ነው ከዚህ በፊት ያየነው ቬክተር አዲሽንን በተለያዩ ሎዎች አይተናል። ላይክ ትሪያንግል ሜተድ፣ ፓራሌሎግራም ሜተድ፣ the other one is the polygon method አይተናል። እነዚህ ያየናቸውን ሜተዶች በሰብስትራክሽን ፕሮሲጀርም the same ነው you know the same way ነው የምንከተለው። ስለዚህ መደመር ላይ አዲሽን ላይ ያየነው ፕሮሲጀር በሰብስትራክሽን እናያለን ማለት ነው። ለዛሬ ግን በጣም ትኩረት አድርገን የምናየው ስፔሻል ኬዝስ some common special cases of vector addition ነው። የመጀመሪያው ኬዝ 1 የምናየው የመጀመሪያው ኬዝ 1 when two vectors are the same in direction. When two vectors are the same in direction, which means parallel to each other. ሁለቱ ቬክተሮች the same direction ሲኖራቸው ማለትም parallel to each other በሚሆኑበት ጊዜ የምንከተለው ፕሪንሲፕል ምንድነው? If vectors a and b are parallel, then the magnitude of the resultant vector r is the sum of the magnitude of the two vectors. Hence, the magnitude of the resultant vector is r equal to a plus b. Here, when we put in the absolute value, as I told you in the previous video, it tells us as it is magnitude. So, the magnitude of the resultant is a plus b. In this formula, what you focus is only on the magnitude. So, if vector a and b are parallel, then the magnitude of the resultant vector r is the sum of the magnitude of the two vectors. The resultant r equal to in the absolute value of a plus b. Since the two vectors are in the same direction, the two vectors are in the same direction, the direction of the resultant vector is in the direction of one of the two. Because if the two vectors are in the same direction, the direction of the resultant is in the direction of one of the two vectors normally. But the magnitude r is in the absolute value, it is a plus b. The second case is when the two vectors are acting in opposite direction. When two vectors act in opposite direction, what will be the resultant? For example, if vector a and b are anti-parallel means if they are in opposite direction, then the magnitude of the resultant vector r is the difference of the magnitude of the two vectors. Hence, the magnitude of the resultant vector is r result in opposite direction. These two vectors are in opposite direction with one another. They are opposite. The direction of the resultant vector is the direction of the larger vector always. When two vectors are in opposite direction, or if they are anti-parallel, the magnitude are in the absolute value a minus b, but the direction always, the direction of the resultant vector is always the large vector. You must consider these points as a note. The resultant of two vectors acting on the same point is maximum when the vectors are acting in the same direction, and minimum when they are in opposite direction. Here, let me ask you one question. When does the resultant of two vectors is maximum? The answer is when the two vectors acting on the same direction. My second question is when does the resultant of two vectors are minimum? The answer is when they act in opposite direction ነው ማለት ነው። Here, figure 1.11 shows a resultant vector R of two vectors A and B when they are in the same direction and when they are in opposite direction. Here, this A shows when the two vectors are in the same direction. Let's consider this is vector A. It has magnitude and direction, and the second vector is B. It has its own magnitude and direction. The direction is in the east direction. So resultant vector is R, which is vector A plus vector B. Vector A plus vector B. So this line shows the resultant vector, which is the sum of vector A and B. The second figure shows, or the second option of the figure 1.11 shows, here is vector A. Here is vector A, which is in the east direction, and the other vector B is here on the west direction. It is in the west direction. So the resultant vector R, this R is A minus B. R is equal to vector A minus vector B. So vector A minus B. From vector A, which is here, vector A is here. When you minus this vector, what we left is this one. From this, what it's left is this vector. This vector is the resultant vector, which is represented here with an arrow. This is the resultant vector, because A minus B is this one. So we will take the direction. Which direction? The direction of the largest vector. Here the maximum vector or the largest vector is vector A. So we will take the direction of the vector A, which is in the east direction. So the resultant vector equal to vector A minus vector B. The direction will be in the east direction. The other scenario or cases is when the two vectors are perpendicular. If vector A and B are perpendicular to each other, as shown here in the figure 1.2, then the magnitude of the resultant vector R is obtained using Pythagoras theorem. You know Pythagoras theorem. Hence, let's consider this is vector A. This is vector A. This one is vector A. This one is vector A, and this one is vector B. This one is vector B, and this one is vector A. When these two vectors are perpendicular, when they make 90 degrees here is the resultant vector. The resultant vector can make an angle theta within the horizontal axis or the horizontal plane. This shows the direction. So from the Pythagoras theorem, you know how Pythagoras theorem works. If it is a right angle triangle, from Pythagoras theorem, if it is A, and if it is B, and if it is 90 degree, and this is the hypotenuse, so C square is equal to A square plus B square. This is a Pythagoras theorem, B square. So what will be the value of C? The value of C will be under the radical, this will be A square plus B square. This is the hypotenuse. So based on this, here is a vector A and here is a vector B. The resultant vector will be R, which is under the radical A square plus B square. A square will be b square. So you can find the magnitude using Pythagoras theorem. The direction of the resultant vector is obtained using trigonometric equation. Resultant, how we find the direction? The direction will be found using trigonometric function. Here is theta, an angle theta. So using tan theta, you can find the direction. What does it mean tan? Tan theta. Let's find tan theta. Tan theta is always equal to opposite over adjacent. Tan theta means opposite of the angle. The opposite of the angle over adjacent. Opposite. This is opposite. OPP ለማለት ፈልጌ ነው። Opposite over adjacent. So tan theta እኩል ይሆናል። Here what is the opposite? The opposite of this theta is the side B. The opposite is B over the adjacent is A. The adjacent is A. Tan theta እኩል ይሆናል B over A. So what will be theta? Theta will be tan inverse of is going to be B over A. So ይሄ ፎርሙላ ቴታ ዳይሬክሽኑ ቴታ እኩል ይሆናል ታን ኢንቨርስ ኦፍ ቢ ኦቨር ኤ የሚለው ፎርሙላ ድራይቭድ የሆነው ቴታ ኢዝ ቴታ ኢኳል ቱ ኦፖዚት ኦቨር አጀሰንት በሚለው ፕሪንሲፕል መሆኑን እንድትረዱ ስለፈለኩ ነው። Let's see an example. Let's understand special cases of additions of vectors using an example. Example 1:1. Two vectors has a magnitude of 6 units and 3 units. What is the magnitude of the resultant vector when the two vectors are in the same direction, in opposite direction, and perpendicular to each other? Here is two vectors. Here is the first vector is 3 units. The second vector is 6 units. A. The resultant when the two vectors are in the same direction. So the first one is vector A, given vector A, it is 6 units. And the other one is vector B. Vector B equal to, it is 3 units. So our required is to calculate the resultant vectors when the two vectors are in the same direction. So when they are in the same direction, the resultant will be addition. So the sum of vector A and B. So R will be, here R will be vector R, resultant vector will be A plus B. That it must put into the absolute value to show that as it is its magnitude. So when we add A plus B, 9 unit will be the magnitude. The second one is when the two vectors are in opposite direction. In opposite direction, if it is in opposite direction, the resultant vector will be again vector A minus B. Vector A minus B. So A is 6, B is 3. The answer will be 3 units. The third one is when the two vectors are perpendicular to each other. Here is 3 units, which is vector B. 3 units, which is vector B. Here is 6 units, vector A. When these two vectors make a perpendicular line here, here r will be calculated using Pythagoras theorem. So r equal to under the radical a square plus b square. So radical 6 square plus 3 square. 6 square means 36 and 3 square will be 9. So when we add this under the radical, the answer will be radical 45. Radical 45. Radical 45 means it's going to be the answer 6.7 units. It will be 6.7 units. Our next video will be 1.5 vector resolution. 1.5 ቬክተር ሪዞሉሽን የሚለውን በሌላ ቪዲዮ ይዤላችሁ ቀርባለሁ። እየተከታተላችሁን ስለሆነ እጅግ በጣም እናመሰግናለን። አሁንም ቻናላችንን ሰብስክራይብ፣ ላይክ፣ ሼር፣ ኮሜንት ማድረግ እንዳትረሱ። እየተከታተላችሁን ስለሆነ በድጋሚ እናመሰግናለን።